This week on the Newscast podcast, we've been discussing the Prime Minister's defence of the Chancellor over the budget.
I was very proud to lead this party at the budget last week, where the Chancellor set out that we would protect the NHS, which we've done in the budget, create the conditions for economic stability, not repeating the mistake of austerity, and bearing down on the cost of living.
After rumours circulate that the government wants to get even closer to the EU, BBC Europe editor Katja Adler gives her verdict.
I guess it takes two to tango is the point.
The EU's not tango. I just think
is it foxtrotting?
No, not even.
And BBC economics editor Faisal Islam reveals his musical tastes to the nation.
Dance, pop, lullaby, Manchester, rap and musicals.
Sums up your...
Age is just a number.
Yeah.
28! Hey.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Hey!
Wow.
20 years younger.
And if you scan the QR code that's on your screen right now, you will then be able to listen to daily episodes of Newscast on BBC Sounds. And they are every single day. But don't do that until you've watched some of the best Friends of the Newscast podcasts discussing some of the biggest stories of the week.
Newscast.
Newscast from the BBC.
Hello, it's Adam in the Newscast studio.
And Chris in the studio.
And Vicky in the studio.
And a newcomer to Newscast, but not to broadcasting. It's Kate Burley.
Hello,
Welcome to the BBC.
Thank you. Thank you for making me so welcome. I appreciate it.
Does it feel like being behind enemy lines?
No, everybody's been very friendly and lovely, but it's certainly, I do feel like the new girl.
Yes.
I don't know where my pencil
Which must be a
case
weird
is.
feeling for you.
Yeah, I don't know where the fridge is for the milk, all that sort of stuff.
So I did a 25-hour-long live newscast for Children in Need a couple of weeks ago, and it made me think about your 1 million minutes, because that's how many live broadcast minutes you've done.
And counting.
Yeah, because isn't it something like, that's like nearly 2 years on
More
air,
live
solid.
telly than anyone else in the world.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot, isn't it?
And now that you're not doing it every day, I mean, obviously you still care about the news. You still want to talk about the news, but has it given you a different perspective on what we all talk about every day, minute by minute?
I'm not sure that it has. I still sort of, the first thing I do when I wake up is look at all the front pages. Then I put on the Today programme. Then I make a cup of tea. Then I put on other shows. And I'm just sort of, easing myself up. I hope that maybe this time next year I won't be doing that routine. But at the moment, that's where I am.
And also, I joked about it being enemy territory, but actually, there is rivalry between the different news organisations. But at Westminster, it's one big gang, actually.
Oh,
yeah, it's a really different vibe, I
I often
think.
say when I'm talking to, say, Beth Rigby from Sky or Robert Preston from ITV, that of course we're competitive, because journalists are competitive. You want to get to a story first or an interview first or whatever it might be. But you can also be friends.
Okay, so you've done your 1 million minutes of broadcasting. Chris, it feels like we've been talking about the budget for about 1 million minutes already. But this week on Monday, Keir Starmer did a speech where it felt like he just wanted to draw a line under all the stuff about whether Rachel Reeves had been telling the whole truth about the nation's finances. And he wanted to just double down on the decisions that they'd made in the budget and why they were a good thing.
Yeah, he wanted to move on from the specifics of the budget argument whilst doubling down on the bits that he wanted to talk up. I mean, not least the scrapping of the two-child cap and talking about how the pride that he felt in doing that, and then sketching out some of the medium-term stuff, albeit in pretty broad terms, around wider change in the benefit system, the stuff he had to say about regulation, the idea that it shouldn't be, the left shouldn't just be seen as a part of the political spectrum that reveres regulation, that sometimes gold plating, as he put it, can get in the way of economic growth. And then that little nod, and we've seen a bit of it, Henry Zefferman's got an interesting piece on the BBC News app about this, around the little nods that we're getting from Labour folk at the moment about the European Union, about our relationship with the European Union, and whether it can be, as they would see it, warmed up a bit more. But the blizzard of questions that he got afterwards from me and from Beth and from Robert and from others were not entirely, but were significantly on the whole question of the budget process, which I think even those who are desperate to see Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves succeed would acknowledge was perhaps not as smooth as they would have liked it to be, and has contributed towards it distracting from this week from what they would have much rather been focusing on, not least because, as Vicky will have picked up on Politics Live, a lot of Labour MPs really like quite a lot of what was in there.
Yeah, it's really striking that every single one that's been on the programme this week and since the budget has been much happier. Yeah, of course, they came on before and they talked about various things that they weren't happy with, and they all, particularly the two-child benefit cap being lifted, It's given them something that they can go back to their constituencies, and when they knock on a door, they've got something that they can say to people, and the cost of living stuff. So in terms of the 150 quid off your energy bill next year, I think you can tell that Keir Starmer is a bit slightly irritated and surprised that why aren't people talking about that? And I think it was Liz Truss, didn't she put in lots of money at one point to bring down people's energy bills?
Yeah, she did.
And then they said, we've literally just spent billions and no one's mentioned it.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating. I think they want to make sure they can get that message across, and they're hoping in time, as you say, that the preamble to the budget is slightly lost, and what will matter to people more in the end will be, okay, am I starting to see things improving?
The little note from the almost history books around that was that they were in the process, weren't they, the Liz Truss government, of announcing that on the day that the Queen died. And so the announcement was rather lost, inevitably. And then it sort of didn't really register. And then the sort of implosion of that government kicked in. And actually, this government that was very keen to project a sort of small state, low tax vision had actually done this colossal intervention.
Yeah, surprisingly.
Kay, you've watched a lot of budget preparations. What was your take on the build up to this one? Because it's sort of gone down as like the most chaotic / leaked about / whatever in history.
I try and always come at it from the public's perspective. And I don't think the public actually care as long as they're not. They weren't lied to, but I think she was certainly economical with the actuality. And I think, who famously said that? I can't remember.
Yes, I know. Who is the original? I've seen that phrase used a lot this week.
Was it Jonathan Aitken?
No.
Core? No, or was it
that was
Minister?
Sword of
Truth.
That was Sword of Truth.
Yeah.
So same ballpark.
Yes, exactly. So don't lie to the public because they're not stupid. And that's basically what I think happened. It was a bit like doing half a football result. Manchester United 2. What was the other part of the score? So 16 billion, yeah, okay. But what about the other, the tax increases, which brought in more money as well? So she had 4 billion quid of headroom, as they call it. It's not a lot of money, but it's a lot more money than 16 billion pound deficit. Why did they do that? It landed really well when it came to the two-child policy being, getting rid of the cap on the two-child policy. So, and that appeals to her voters. So why not go with that rather than saying, fiscal policy, blah, blah, blah. What does that actually mean?
Yeah, I do wonder, because I'm thinking back to a few episodes of Newscast ago when Matthew Doyle, Keir Starmer's old director of comms, was sat in that seat where you're sitting, Vicky, and he said, well, nowadays you have to have more of a conversation with the country about what's going on in the budget, because you don't want it to just land with no preparation on the day itself. And also you've got to compete with everyone else's demands on their attention to tell your story. And so part of me wonders if that's what they were trying to do.
Don't need to worry about that if the OBR's involved, do you?
Well, yeah, because actually it's in all black and white early in advance anyway. Yeah, exactly. But I wondered if actually what Rachel Reeves was trying to do was to have a more transparent kind of budgeting process. Now, of course, that then was accompanied with lots of leaks, lots of ideas being floated and
parties
rejected.
have always dripped out a few actual announcements early, haven't they? And there's definitely always been kite flying, but this was on a slightly different level. And it was all down to that press conference, wasn't it? It's
that was the unprecedented
You sort of, as a journalist, you think, wow, calling a press conference at that time in the morning, that's just really unusual. So immediately you're thinking, okay, something not normal is going on here. Why is she doing this? Actually, it's slightly alarming. I mean, I think there were quite a few people, and actually we have guests on our programme who are running businesses or all different walks of life, and they were slightly worried by the build-up to the budget, actually, when, as Kay says, there was a little bit of good news in there, but that wasn't conveyed.
At the end of the day, the public don't really understand the numbers. They don't care about the numbers. The Chancellor cares about the numbers. The Treasury Bank of England. What the public care about is whether politicians are honest with them. And if they've got the whole picture, then they can process that. It means that my kids can get more money, 500,000 kids out of poverty. Brilliant. But if you're not honest with me, why should I trust you next time?
Although actually, the thing that jumped out at me from Keir Starmer's speech on Monday, although he did 2 speeches on Monday, so the one he did in the morning that we're talking about now, he fessed up to the fact that they had been seriously toying with increasing income tax and breaking the manifesto. And he actually just came out and admitted that, or acknowledged that in a less.
And that's the first time he'd said it on camera. It was interesting because I asked the first question. It was one of those moments where
You always ask the first question.
Well, not always.
Not always now.
Not always, no. But
99 times out of 100.
it's great. It's wonderful.
You can take the girl out of Sky.
And
Put you off now. I'm not
sorry.
sorry.
No, well, a few of us, Beth and Robert, and a few of us have been sort of kicking around which sort of territory we're going into. And often, if we get wind before about the order, we will compare notes a bit because you might pick up on what the first person's asked,
Of course,
or whatever. And I was going to ask, as was Beth, as was Robert, about this whole question around sort of honesty ? It was one of those moments where you ask the question and the Prime Minister sort of shuffles the paper, like, where's the thing I need for when these set of questions come? And he had that answer. And part of that answer, which he then developed with Beth and Robert, was him saying on camera for the first time, we did toy with, these are my words, not his, but driving a coach and horses through the manifesto and putting up income tax rates, which is the very thing the manifesto said that they wouldn't do.
And put up tax the year before, though, hadn't they, with national insurance? So they'd already broken the manifesto.
Yes,
Well, that
although I
was
think
on
there's
employers.
more. Yeah, there's arguably a bit
They're working
more
people.
wiggle room.
True.
Do you think they're ever going to make election promises again after all this?
Yes, I do.
And I think the next budget
Will they
will be
break them? Yes, they will.
and the next budget will be shrouded in secrecy, and Rachel Reeves will be locked in if
Might
she's still
not
in the
do one.
job, she might just
Might
be
not do
locked
one.
in her house for like the 2 weeks beforehand, so that no one can read anything into her.
Yeah, can you imagine
appearances.
next time she goes, I've got a really good idea, I'm going to do a pre-budget presser. No, don't.
I think a bit like I think the sort of political class will be reticent to go down the referendum route again because of the not because of outcomes necessarily, but because of the sort of the atmosphere and all the rest of it, and the pain it caused so many political parties. I'm not entirely sure we'll see pre-budget press conferences from any Chancellor any time now, even though she can make an argument that says she was more candid than any previous Chancellor.
Yeah.
But just the danger about, because the minute you're in that situation as a Chancellor, you've got to be quite careful about what you say. Otherwise, you might as well just read the budget out. You might as well just do it.
And
But
also
then-
anything the Chancellor says, because our bond borrowing costs are so high, anything you say can cost the country quite a lot of money.
Then gets into that and blah, blah, blah. And then there's things you want to get out there, and then there's other stuff that leaks that you don't want, that you hadn't anticipated leaking and all that. You know.
Kay, I'm just thinking about when you talk about keeping politicians honest. Did you ever come up with like a method for when you're interviewing one of them and you've got them in front of you? Did you have a method for getting to the truth? Would you like to reveal that now? Or is it gonna be...
Absolutely. No. So the late, great Brian Redhead, who used to work for the Today programme on Radio 4, he always used to say, if your question is longer than 8 words, you don't understand the topic. I would always try and keep it really, really, really short so they didn't have any wriggle room in their answers. So they had to answer exactly what I asked them. And Michael Heseltine was always brilliant when I interviewed him. If I asked what could be considered as a yes/no answer, he would always go yes or no. And you're not in your stride then for your second
he's not
question.
turned off,
Because they're then using the same technique you are, which is minimising the time.
So that's what I learned off Michael Heseltine as well.
I've realised I'm a bit guilty of saying to people, is it this or this? And you're like, no, that's terrible. Don't give them 2 options.
Yeah.
Make them come up with their own options. So that's something I've
And
learned
never
from
ask a
watching
yes or no
greats like
question.
you.
Never, because if you do, that's what they'll give you in reply.
Now back to, it feels like we're minutely analysing this Keir Starmer speech on Monday, but you mentioned the Brexit thing. So he talked about options for getting closer to the EU, some of which are options the government's already taking. Then Starmer did this other speech on Monday night in the city in his white tie, the Lady Mayor's banquet, and he talked about Brexit being a bad thing or delivered badly again there.
Yes.
And then Brexit has come up a few more times this week from the government. You mentioned Henry's piece on the BBC News website. He seems to have taken the view that it's not all as might seem.
Well, it's not so much that it's not all as might seem as is there much more to it at
it
the
might be
moment
being over-egged by
about than the rhetoric. So they would argue, they've tried to sort of warm things up. They've got various ideas in the pipeline. Some are still being worked through. The Prime Minister, as you say in that speech on Monday night, was talking about, he respected the democratic will of the people from 2016, but he thinks that the way it's been implemented has been a mess, and that he wants to have a closer relationship. But then at Prime Minister's Questions on Wednesday, he talked about and still used the language of red lines around the customs union and the single market. And there are some folk within the Labour family that is broadly but not exclusively pro-European, and so kind of likes this as a sort of direction of travel, who would love to see him go as far as advocating, or Labour at some point go as far as advocating rejoining the customs union. But the issue you start getting then is the trade-offs in the other direction when you've done a trade deal with India, and there's the talk of the trading relationship with America, and then those those kind of trade-offs, plus the inevitable reaction from some of a different point of view who would say that you're unpicking the central tenets of Brexit.
Yeah, I was just looking at it, trying to work out what is going on here. And I was going back to the Theresa May days of when you'd read between the lines of the speeches to work out where they were going next. And it didn't seem like there really was a next.
No, I mean, they're talking about the practicalities. I think that's how he wants to try and frame it. It's like, I'm a pragmatic politician. We need growth. Let's try and make trading easier where we can. But again, I'm not sure where they're going to end up with it. And actually, haven't they had a bit of a setback because they wanted to let British defence companies bid for contracts? And actually, the EU's asking for quite a lot of money. And at the moment, and this did feel very reminiscent, didn't it, of the Brexit days? We've walked away from that. Now, is that a bargaining position? Do we go back and say, well, we'll give you a bit, but not as much as you want? Who knows? But I'm not sure they are entirely clear. It's not entirely clear how far they're willing to go. And as you say, there's plenty of politicians, I mean, Liberal Democrats, of course, but some Labour as well, who would like to go further.
But isn't it interesting that the low-hanging fruit, which is what Starmer was going for, things like the plant and animal health deal, SPS, to get the checks down on British food exports, that hasn't happened yet. The youth mobility scheme, which everyone seems to be very in favour of, actually quite difficult to actually reach common ground on. Defence, hang on, everyone's in favour of working better together on defence in Europe and funneling some of that to Ukraine. Turns out to be harder than it looks. So that to me feels like there's not a lot of progress.
Well, actually, the youth mobility thing, even from those within the Labour fold who are keen on a warmer relationship with the EU, are well aware that it becomes a migration question again, and that's tricky. And yet, when these various do's that involve talking to EU ambassadors and whatever, their argument has for long been, this is what we want. This is what we want. Lots of people in the EU would love to be able to, as a young person, have to spend time in the UK. So why not make it happen? So it's back to those trade-offs again.
Although we're a long way from when you were on College Green for like 15 hours a day talking to Tory backbenchers about this backstop or that backstop.
With the bloke with the megaphone.
It's a very different world when it comes to the B word, isn't it?
It is. I just sort of take a helicopter view of what's happening with the EU at the moment. They have to be careful because Farage has got 9 million quid today, the biggest amount of money ever by a single donor, living donor. Thank you. I think the two big issues are young people being able to move in and out of Europe, and I think he needs to look at that again, and security. I think as we do not get on with some of our European friends a little bit further west, and we east and we see what's going on with Putin, and he is loving the fact that there are certain divisions in Europe, and I think that makes us significantly weaker. And we can argue about economic pragmatism and trade. If we're at war, it doesn't really matter, all bets are off.
And it's just so interesting though that did this defence thing fall down because Emmanuel Macron cares more about protecting French arms companies than he does about Europe having a better...
Isn't there a suggestion that Canada are going to be allowed?
Yeah, Canada's getting quite a budget deal,
yeah,
like cut price deal to be part of this thing. So,
but then if you're the president of France and you're in a really tight political spot and you've got, the defence unions or equivalent saying, well, what about French jobs? You're going to want to stand up for that, aren't you? That's from his perspective sensible.
Kay mentioned the £9 million donation to Reform that emerged today because of the Electoral Commission publishing their annual update or quarterly update of what the parties have received. £9 million seems like quite a lot in one go.
It is a lot.
I don't know what Sky News salaries are like. That seems like a lot.
That is a lot in one go. As Kay was saying, that by the metric of donations from individuals, particularly individuals who are alive, as opposed to it being a will, something in a will, a bequest. That's the word. That's the word.
Just to put it in perspective, £10.5 million in the third quarter is what Reform have received, more than the Tories and Labour combined.
Actually, the Tories were doing quite well, I think, with their donations. They had been like 6 million, sort of 3 times more than Reform in the first half of the year. But in the run-up to the elections in May, it's very, very useful for Reform to have.
And it's funny you mentioned the Tories because Chris and I had a chat with Kemi Badenoch in the studio a few weeks ago, and she said that actually her first big challenge when she became Tory leader was sorting out the donations. This is how she put it.
there are a lot of internal things that needed fixing, which your listeners don't need to know all about. But making sure that we survived as a going concern, money, very, very important. Without money, a party can't survive.
Was there a risk that you would have gone totally bust?
Yes, there was.
Really? So, I mean, she's definitely had success because the Tories have been raking it, and maybe not in £9 million chunks from one person. But this guy, Christopher Harborne, I was just checking on the Electoral Commission database, which is actually very useful once you can get it to work. He actually gave about £9 million to the Brexit Party in 2019 for that election. So actually, it's not an unprecedented donation
to do that twice.
Yeah,
aviation apparently is
and crypto. So it's not. It's unprecedented, but kind of precedented as well.
Yes. Well, what I hear from some of Reform's rivals, particularly in the context of the fascinating race for the Senedd in Wales next May, is the Reform's rivals there have noticed that they have quite a bit of money in terms of leaflets and mail drops and all the rest of it. So this matters, and it counts, and it can make a difference. It's not everything, but it's usually better to have the money than not, if everything else being equal for a party.
And it's hurting the Tories, I think, more than Labour.
Yes, I think so. That definitely. That they are shedding votes very much, or taking votes from the Tories much more. And actually this week there's been several defections from former Tory MPs to Reform.
Yeah.
And those numbers do look like they're going up a bit. And
there was that picture of those MPs who used to be called the New Conservatives or the Real Conservatives, something, and half of the people in that picture from a couple of years ago are now in Reform.
Yeah.
Was it Wes Streeting who said, vote Reform, get Tory?
Well, and this is the interesting thing. At what point, I've asked Nigel Farage about this actually, and I think they're aware of this. At what point does it become damaging to an insurgency if you look like any port in a Conservative storm? Now, obviously, political parties.
How do you mean?
Well, as in, if there's a constant trickle of recent Conservatives to Reform, and you are making an argument as Reform that you're this bright new thing that isn't, as they describe it, the uni party of everyone else.
But we're not the other two main parties.
How plausible is that argument if there's this trickle of people principally, not exclusively, but principally from one direction? Now, political parties usually welcome defectees, don't they? Because it looks like the wind is blowing in your direction and people have given up. And giving up on when you have held a public political loyalty. Often, people's political loyalties in Westminster are often longer than their relationship with a spouse or whatever. They are their entire adult life or before that. It's a massive thing to do.
There's also quite a lot of infidelity on that metaphor.
But it used to be very dramatic, didn't it? If someone actually changed parties, you would be walking across
Literally
the other side. Yeah.
Well, Zia
very
Yusuf,
dramatic.
interestingly, he tweeted about this and said, I just want to reassure people who have been already in Reform UK that when it comes to handing out seats for the next election, we will prioritise the people, the grassroots of our party, not... I was quite rude about sort of former Tory MPs, didn't quite call them has-beens, but not those people.
Of course, Zia Yusuf defected from his own job and then re-defected quite quickly back.
And he was a former Conservative himself. Not an MP, but, he was, previously.
And just on the size of these donations, okay, it's quite natural for people to go, oh, that seems like a lot of money. Is that buying influence? But then you realise the alternative to that is people funding political parties through their taxes, through state funding of political
parties. Which
parties.
people just don't want to do. I mean, this is a debate that's gone on for
forever.
So long, hasn't it? I remember
more than
Blair
minutes.
wrestling with it, and yes, and there's that's the other solution, isn't it? So it's either private donations or, as taxpayers, do people want to fund it? I don't think they do they?
Or should there be a limit on how much you can spend?
Because I suppose there are already sort of limits to the system about who can donate, but people would say that they're quite...
And then you go to the United States, the amount of money that they spend over there is just eye-watering.
Billions. Yeah. Billions. Kay, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, that was quick.
Yeah, time flies when you're having fun.
To stay for longer.
Yeah, you're used to rolling news. We could go on for like another couple of hours if you'd like. Yeah. Is there anything else that's caught your eye that you want to talk about?
I just wanted to talk about, very quickly, what's going on with the two ladies that were at the dispatch box when it was the budget. I thought I didn't appreciate appreciate the tone that the leader of the opposition took when she was referring to the Chancellor. They're both politicians. They've both gone into their jobs because they want to make a difference. Come on, ladies, let's not catfight.
Oh, but isn't that just the knockabout of Westminster?
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be.
Interesting.
That's my view.
So if you saw Kemi Badenoch at a Christmas party in Westminster,
I would talk to her about it.
Would you give her a ticking off?
Absolutely. I went to the Specky party last night in the hope that I might see her.
So you could lay down the law.
I would have said it's not acceptable.
And was she not there?
She wasn't there when I was there.
Maybe she's avoiding
the
you. She will do now.
But don't you think?
Is it particularly? Is your observation particularly because it was two women doing that, or would you have had the same view if it was Kemi saying that to a man?
I don't know, because it was two women.
Indeed.
But it made me think, that's not appropriate.
It was really interesting because I've had mixed reactions from women about that, and some saying Rachel Reeves should be able to take that. That's fine, and actually, if Kemi had done it to a man, we wouldn't have worried about that, so why not? And then others saying that exactly like you, that they just didn't like the tone of it and the fact that it was a woman doing it.
The subtext of that, which we were talking about at the time on Politics Live when we were waiting for the budget, was that, we just had that document that had leaked where we were reading the budget out before Rachel Reeves was, and then PMQ starts. And I thought, Kemi Badenoch here could put the Chancellor in the right spot and say, Chancellor, don't worry about rising to your feet in half an hour. I've got it here, and read it out. And she has since said, hasn't she, Kemi Badenoch, that on arriving in the chamber, she felt sorry for Rachel Reeves, thinking, this isn't her fault, I'm going to go easy on her. And then she argues that the reason she reacted in the way that she did, Kemi Badenoch, was because Rachel Reeves, in her view, was very kind of partisan and angry in Kemi Badenoch's direction. So,
But when I've interviewed politicians and we've had a good knockabout, at the end, I always try and be friendly, ask a warm question at the end. So, maybe
even if they're jelly on the floor.
Yeah, nailed them to the wall. But then,
once she's beaten them up, kicked them a few times.
So
Here we go.
So
Let me help you out.
And then take them for lunch sometimes.
Yeah, often.
But I sort of think that's fine, isn't it? I mean,
Isn't this the equivalent that actually, if you're in the House of Commons on a day like that and you're literally at a dispatch box, a whole chamber designed to be adversarial?
And I think most
that, but then you move on.
Particularly those who've been around a while, know that there's certain moments, particularly when you're in front of the cameras and all the rest of it, where it is absolutely our role to scrutinise and to scrutinise fearlessly and fiercely. But that doesn't stop. You can still be a warm human. Well, you can be a warm human being at the time, but you certainly can be afterwards.
Yeah.
Because they've got a job to do, and so have we in a democratic.
But just on the tone point and the budget statement, I was presenting on 5 Live last week, and the most text we got on the day after the budget was people complaining about Kemi Badenoch's attitude and language.
Really interesting.
And it just was a really good lesson for me that what sells at Westminster, because Tory MPs were loving it, might not sell with the public, and it's just worth remembering that.
When I stepped back, I said at the end, let politicians of every flavour just rejoice at that news. And I got loads of WhatsApp messages from every politician, or every party saying, well, we're not glad that you've stepped back. Let's go and have lunch. So
because they enjoy it, they want it.
You can have a bit of cut and thrust, but you need to be a decent person.
Maybe that's the point, having a bit of humanity in there as well, that it's not all the same tone.
Adversarial, yeah.
Who has the best Christmas party, by the way, amongst the celebs?
What do you mean?
Well, you just mentioned going to the
Specky party.
Specky know how to throw a bash.
They do, and it's a great office as well. So Piers Morgan does a good Christmas
So
party.
I've never been invited to that.
Yeah, you see, I've been carried out by a rugby player before now. On that note.
What? Because you couldn't get yourself out, or because it was just like, hey, it's a rugby player.
It's just a really good night.
I was in my high heels. I said, my feet are hurting. He said, let me help you. There's photos somewhere.
The Newscast Christmas party doesn't actually exist, so we couldn't have the equivalent. Kay, thank you so much for coming in. Lovely to see you.
We'll carry you out.
Hey.
Oh, yeah. Mason the muscles. Yeah.
Vicky, great to see you.
You too.
And Chris, good to catch up.
And you.
And thanks to you for watching this episode of Newscast. Bye-bye.
Newscast.
Newscast from the BBC.